Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Hope you enjoyed your networking break. Now we're off to our second session of the day. So, for the second session of the day, Theo Green, Chief Growth Officer of Brave Bison, is joining us. He's going to be talking about why and when they buy businesses. Hi, Theo, can you hear me?
I can, Barris. Hi, how are you?
I'm all right, thank you. It's great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks very
Uh,
much for having me.
And we're looking forward to we're just keeping up with the day of talking about mergers and acquisitions, and this is something that very close to your heart, and you do lots of, as I understand. And we're really looking forward to hearing your criteria on why you think it's the right time to do an acquisition, and when it's the right time for you to do an acquisition. And you've recently done a big one, so
Yeah,
we're looking forward to hearing all about that. So over to you, Theo.
perfect. I'm just going to share my screen to walk through a deck. I'm hoping everyone can see that. Can you see that, Barris?
Yes, we can.
Sorry, I can't hear you. You can,
Yes, we can.
perfect.
Mhm.
Okay, so just a little bit then about Brave Bison, just before we kick off. So Brave Bison is a new era media company. I guess we call ourselves new era because we hope that we have a slightly fresh and slightly forward-looking way of working in the media and marketing world. Really, we are a media agency that works with clients to buy media and to produce content. But we're also a media owner. So we have our own network of channels, around 650 of them, all on different social platforms. So we like to think that the media company of the future will be very much combining those two business models: services where you work with clients and they pay you fees, but also digital advertising where you have your own properties. And I guess ironically that is how it used to be, right? I think back in the 70s, most advertising agencies would really just be selling media. The creative would come for free. So when we think about sort of the future patterns for brand advertisers, we really only focus on sort of newer, high performance digital channels. So everything that we do is digital only, and we're one of the few businesses out there that does combine those two business models. There are definitely a couple of companies doing it, but Brave Bison is hopefully one of the more exciting ones. So I run the business alongside my brother Ollie. We are public. We're listed on AIM under the ticker BBSN, and we have offices in London, where we service the UK and Europe, and then we also have offices in Singapore, where we work with JPAC. We have different territories that we work with out there, and then we also have a tech office in Bulgaria, and in parts of Eastern Europe, where the majority of our tech talent is. We recently made a large acquisition. We've made two acquisitions in the last 12 months, and we recently bought a business called Greenlight. It was a digital advertising and technology company, roughly doubled the size of our business. So we now do around 30 million pounds of revenue, so 40 odd million dollars. And we think that we have an interesting and exciting model for going forward. Our business is really split into three pillars. So we have our social and influence business. This is where we build where we build channels for brands. So we run influencer campaigns, we run paid social channels, we run organic social channels, and this is really all about content and context. And data is important, but really you're selling creativity to your clients here, and they're paying you a fee to deliver that. And then we have our performance and commerce business. This is really about making your clients money. So this is where we drive sales, we drive downloads, we drive conversions, we drive checkouts. And this is much more about data and insight and tech. And this is where we're totally channel agnostic. So everything is all about performance. You give us a budget, and we'll decide where to put it based on what's returning the best. And then finally, we have our media business, our new era media network. And this is a network of channels, around 650, predominantly on YouTube, but also on Snapchat, on Facebook, on Instagram, and on TikTok. And this is where, if you watch our content, you will be served a short advertisement. It's either a pre-roll or a mid-roll ad, and that generates revenue that we split with the platforms Facebook, and the rest, and then with our partners. And these are some of the brands that we own. Most of our Snapchat portfolio, these are brands that we own, but also some channels that we run on behalf of our clients. Some of the clients that we work with, I think, we like to try and work with big companies. I know that sounds obvious, but actually you'd be surprised. A lot of large agencies, do want to pick up clients that are spending, 10, 15 grand a month. I think for us, our strategy has always been around land and expand. So we want to work with a very big company on a small project and then turn that into a larger project. And we don't really tend to market sort of far and wide. We target enterprise, and generally speaking, we find enterprises that we think aren't doing something quite right, and that we can do it better for them, either better than an in-house team or better than an incumbent agency. And then that's who we end up working with. We also work globally. So we have clients where we run sort of multinational campaigns. New Balance is a good example. We run around 22 digital channels for them, all EMEA, 7 different languages, $10 million plus of ad spend. So we try and get sort of regional markets as well. And then I guess what does this mean for Brave Bison? What are we trying to do? We think that there's a really exciting future in bringing together these two things, because fundamentally the brands that are working with you on your services business for fees, the ones that pay you to execute performance marketing campaigns, digital campaigns, produce content, run their channels, run SEO, are inevitably buying digital media, most likely on one of your platforms. So, outside of search, everything that's discovery based, everything on YouTube, everything on Snapchat, most website content, podcast content, all of that is media where the same brands are buying content. So fundamentally, we think there's a bit of a flywheel here, and we're looking to expand out these digital services. We've acquired a ton this year. We've got really big into performance marketing. We've got really big into paid media. We have a really interesting e-commerce practice, SEO practice, digital PR practice. We're working on Amazon marketing. We're building into that. And at the same time, we've expanded our digital media networks. We've brought in new channels. We've brought in new Snap shows. We've brought in new websites. We've brought in new Instagram pages. And it's still early days, right? We still have a very specific audience in the greater context of digital advertising. But fundamentally, we think we can grow that, whereby actually suddenly our sports network of channels starts to look very interesting to some of the companies that we're working with on an influencer marketing basis. And that flywheel is really interesting from a business model point of view, because you get double bubble, you get 2 bites of the cherry. You get to sell media, but you also get to sell fees. And we think that that's an interesting future for a business like ours, and definitely something that we've seen happening with the likes of Lad Bible, Jungle Creations, parts of Vice. And the left-hand side of the business is always fees, right? That's your typical digital agency. You win a client, you hire more staff, you run it to a 20% margin if you're doing well, and that's the business that you've got, and you can get that to be a big business. But the scale offered through that is somewhat limited. Whereas on the right-hand side, it's totally unlimited in terms of scale, right? It doesn't cost any more money to produce a piece of content that gets seen by 500 million people than it does 1 million people. But it has a huge difference on the amount of revenue that video makes. So fundamentally, that's a more scalable business. And we also get quite excited about some of the longer term opportunities in terms of programmatic advertising, direct sold advertising, but then also pivoting towards e-commerce. So subscription for content, e-commerce and merchandising opportunities, but also events. So I guess, where does this leave us from an acquisitions perspective? I think we have quite a clear business model. We know what we want to do, and we know how we want to build it. And it's really about filling in those blank spaces on either side of that flywheel. So we want to buy more digital services that can be cross-sold and upsold, but also new audiences that we can plug in and we can add a bit of scale to, because we have an already existing team. And there are some key themes when we look at buying businesses. When we're looking at an agency, I think the first thing is always about who's running the business and what are their plans. I think it's very difficult to buy an agency with someone who doesn't want to grow that agency. You need a business plan that comes from within. You can't force your business plan on someone else. So how big do they want to go? How what do they want to do? I think we're also very interested in clients and how much they're spending. I think for us, a client spending £1 million a year is a very interesting client. People have different ranges for what's big. So Martin Sorrell talks about Whoppers, which are clients that spend $20 million or more at S4 Capital, at Media Monks. We're not quite at $20 million for a Whopper. So for us, £1 million is a Whopper. We're really interested in that because it means that you've got proper buy-in from a client, and the client's going to listen to you. Financials aren't really that important to us. I think we know how to run an agency, and it's not that complicated to run an agency, right? You sell time. So I think from our perspective, it's all about the proposition. Does the proposition really ring true? Is it something that is going to grow? Is it something that clients are going to want to buy? Whether or not you can run it to the perfect margin, as long as you're not losing money and as long as it's not below 10%, whether it's 10, 15 or 20, I think that's where being part of a big organization, you can add help. So really it's about that staff cost to net revenue ratio. And then for a media company, it's all about the audience, right? Who owns them? How do you reach them? Is it 100% dependent on a platform? Is it not? Does the algorithm drive your views, or do they come from the actual people that already subscribe to your content? Is this interesting to advertisers? Do we think that any of our existing brand advertisers would take space? Can this be bigger than it is already? Often you see brands that kind of plateau. They don't get much bigger than something. If you only have a certain amount of ad slots, it's much harder to grow that. And then also, can we add something to this by plugging it into our network? So we have quite a sophisticated network for audience development and fitting all that together. And I think we think sometimes we can help make a brand bigger and better than it might be on its own. And then I guess it comes also down to valuations. I think it's a tricky one because people like talking about multiples, and I think that's kind of the market standard multiples. What multiple of revenue are you going to what multiple of earnings are you going to pay, basically? And I think we've always struggled a bit with that because it's quite a difficult thing to triangulate. I think we take the view that no business is worth more than 10 times its earnings. And that's every business. That's tech businesses, that's non-tech businesses. It's just which year's earnings are you talking about, right? If you can see that your earnings are growing by 10, 15, 20% per annum, and you're paying 10 times or you're paying 20 times, it's not actually that long before you've paid 10 times because the earnings have grown and you've cut some costs. So in a weird way, it's sort of, we look at it as 10 times earnings, but not sure which year's earnings you'll be valuing that off, right? Is it last year? Is it current year? Is it this year or this year plus two even? Sometimes you can look at. It's all about how much confidence you have in the business plan. So really, once you've added in your cost savings, I think for most businesses, you should be paying between six to 8 times. And I guess there's a big difference in terms of earnouts. I think earnouts work for some people, they don't work for others. Our model isn't really to do earnouts. We either buy the whole agency up front at one price, or we do 50% cash, 50% stock. We don't want to be misaligned with our people. I think it's tough to buy a business and then tell the people in that business that they have to do something that they then think impacts their earnout. So we don't tend to do earnouts. And then I guess just finally, what markets do we look at? I think we're really interested in performance marketing for the app economy. I think we see more and more going into this sort of, I guess it's been popularized as the metaverse, but I think that's kind of unfair because really we're just talking about gaming at this stage, which is that driving downloads for apps is in itself becoming its own art. And we're really excited about that space. It's very difficult. App Store optimization and performance marketing for apps is really hard. You've got tons of issues around privacy, around iOS changes, but we think that's a really exciting space. Digital PR we like a lot, particularly as a function of SEO. Digital experience and product, I think, is a great business because it's a combination of design and UX, but also tech, which is very sticky. your clients really tend to listen to you. You get really good buy-in from very senior people, CIOs, CMOs, CEOs, and then really any kind of programmatic solutions because they plug into our digital media network. So we have an immediate advantage there over other businesses. And then on the network side, what do we like? Newsletters, I think, are very exciting. They're totally under monetized from an advertising perspective. I think it's really hard to sell ads in newsletters, but I do think you can get people to pay for newsletters. I do think you can get people to pay for content. I think newsletters are a really interesting way of delivering it because you can own the process yourself as opposed to putting it behind a paywall on something like Patreon or even OnlyFans, which despite being used for different purposes, it is actually quite a good way of putting content behind a paywall to get your subscribers to pay for it if you're producing some sort of entertainment content. Influencer-based entertainment we think is really interesting. And then YouTube networks that are in good territories, US, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, different English-speaking sort of places. And then in terms of markets, absolutely JPAC, we like a lot. We think there's huge growth there. It's a less competitive environment. We've got an office there already. We've got presence in Japan. We've got presence in Thailand, which is fun. And then also anything with a presence in Europe. I think we're quite excited to be working with companies in Europe because we think that we have quite an exciting offering. I think the UK is very strong. The UK and the US are probably stronger than Europe and APAC when it comes to digital services. They've had more insight. They've been working with it for longer. There's more digital penetration in those markets, so people are more sophisticated, and as a consequence, you can sell that learning to be better than the local incumbents. And then yes, the US, but that's just not something that we think about yet. I think it's a very competitive place, and until we have a very clear understanding of what we'd like to do, I don't think we'd be interested in the US at this stage. So I hope that's enough of an overview, Barris. I'll stop sharing now.
Fantastic. That was great, actually, Theo. You went into more detail than I thought you would, and I've been the vibe I'm getting from Brave Bison, and also we get that from your website, anyways. Is that you? I think position yourself more like a challenger media organization, yeah, because
Yeah,
you're doing things that most people don't do. And by looking at that, I have lots of questions, but we ran out of time. I'm just going to ask one.
sure.
And the thing is, as you have your own channels and you have your own advertisers, this reminds me of a very, let's say, similar problem or potential issue that we face in the world of events. Yeah, there are venues, there are organizers, and there are venue organizers. There are venues that also organize. So that really is a hard place for organizers to really tackle. And don't you become like a media owner that has its own channel and does advertising? How do you accommodate other advertisers into your existing channels? And when a Brave Bison client comes in, can you override that campaign? How do you tackle that?
So I guess the beauty of digital advertising is it's not subjective, right? It's not like you're selling ad slots on ITV and you're saying we hope to reach this many people who are of this kind of person, this gender, this age, whatever. Digital advertising is much more specific. So either you want that audience or you don't want that audience, and as a consequence, you're able to be very specific with your clients and say, look,
Mhm.
if you're interested, we believe that buying on this channel will produce this return on ad spend. You get one shot at doing it. If you're wrong, your client doesn't want to work with you. If you're
Mhm.
right, then your client is thrilled. There's no actual difference between buying an audience of, let's say, 25 something sports people interested in sports on YouTube on our network versus on someone else's, because they're ultimately the same eyeballs with the same data behind them. So I think you have to be very transparent with your client. We try and only charge our clients based on time, not on a percentage of spend. So
Mhm.
hopefully we're aligned with them from that perspective,
I
and
understand.
that so far has been okay.
Actually going to ask another question. Sorry, it just keeps to me. About the acquisition thing, I understand your current setup is very specific, and you have repeated many times that you actually have a very specific plan on where you want to go and how you want to get there. So, in terms of acquisitions, so that I think rules out being opportunistic for you. So you must have a target hit list, or you must have other potential acquisitions waiting for you out there. Do you do that, or are you somewhat opportunistic if an opportunity arises? How do you go about creating a pipeline for acquisitions?
I mean, I think we just sort of we know the kind of businesses that we're interested in. I think we spend a bit of time, scoping it out. I think we talk to people a lot. We're very active, just chatting to people, seeing how things are going, checking in. It could be 6, 12 months before actually meeting someone and learning about their business between making an offer. We like to really get to know people. These are all
Mhm,
people that we're going to be working with for at least the next 3, probably 5 years. So
mhm,
we don't tend to jump into to better people too quickly. Although at the same time, when things do pop up, you kind of have to be quite reactive. I mean, we bought a business out of administration during lockdown. To be fair, that was a business that we were trying to buy prior. So not a huge amount of learning to be done, but I think it's very hard to buy a people-based business on a sort of
mhm.
reactive, opportunistic basis because you don't actually get to keep any of the people. So it's very hard to be too opportunistic when it comes to agencies.
Fantastic, Theo. I think we're gonna just run out of keep on running out of time. Thank you so much for being with us. It's been
Thank
great
you.
to have you, and hopefully we'll see you some at some other event. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks very much.
So, everyone, we have actually spilled over like 6, 7 minutes now and into your networking break. So, we're gonna stop there, and quick fire networking is back on, and we will be back on the hour with Jet Weavers from Crowd. See you there.